waking up in hostels with people dead in the room. Do you know what I mean? There was actually a guy I know one time, I used to use him. Um, I went and got, two of us went and got heroin, and we went back to the room, and I smoked it and he injected, and I fell asleep in the bed, and I woke up next morning and he was dead in the bed. Like, I mean, he was only 18, like, you know what I mean? So stuff like that, you know what I mean? When I was young, like, I mean, I never felt like I fitted in. You know, my dad was in the army. I never wanted to be at home. I always wanted to be out in the streets. I started to hang around with older guys when I was young, and they'd be like smoking cigarettes when I was 11. I was 11, like, and they'd be smoking cigarettes and maybe drinking cans and that. You know what I mean? And I'd be getting subs off them and that. When I was around 12, then I'd be hanging around with them same guys, and they'd be doing like sniffing glue and sniffing thinners and petrol, butane, all that. You know what I mean? And I kind of started doing it, you know. And over the last few years, because I'm in recovery the last 7 years, I've learned that my addiction started from a very, very young age. You know what I mean? I was always wanting more and like not fitting in with everybody. And I don't know why that is. I'm always trying to learn about it. Like, but when I was doing all that with the older guys, I mean, I felt like I fitted in. So, I mean, I felt like I belonged. And anytime when they were doing it, you know what I mean, I would always do more. Like, I mean, it was like when I was 13, like I would be drinking alcohol, like, I mean, and some of my friends would get 3 cans, I'd get 6 cans. So I'd drink it and I'd black out, you know what I mean? I'd either be brought home by the guards or my friends would carry me home, whatever, like, you know what I mean? And I was always like that. And the same when I was 14, 15, I was doing E's, and my friends would be doing 2 or 3 E's, and I'd be like taking, do you know what I mean, E's all weekend just to burn myself out, do you know what I mean? Because I think it was just to stop my head thinking. And as I went older, then I think when I hit around 18, I tried heroin for the first time. I was introduced to a guy in Swords. I was at a party when we taking all these, and he told me that was good for coming down. And I smoked it, and it brought me down, and I felt good, you know what I mean? And for the first few years of taking heroin, I'd only do it the odd time. Anytime I was ever like I was burnt out of taking these all weekend, I just go up to Ballyone, give it a heroin, and sneakily smoke it on the side and not tell anybody. Do you know what I mean? And I've done that for years. And if I went out drinking, I couldn't just go out and have a few pints. I'd go out and have a few pints, and then it'd be a bag of coke, then it'd be E's, then it could be acid. Do you know what I mean? And I was just go, 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 constantly go, go, go. Do you know what I mean? Just couldn't stop. And fucking yeah, that was just me, you know what I mean? And I think I'd get a job, I'd work a job for a few weeks, and then I get sacked because I'd be missing days, and went on and moved down to Kerry to get away from drugs, and
Why
for
Kerry?
Clarny.
Why Kerry?
I don't know, just I was down there before, and I just really, really liked it. It was just a nice pace of life, and it was beautiful scenery, and I thought that if I moved down there, that I could start a new life and away from drugs and all. But what I was doing was I brought my head with me. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't leaving anything behind. I went down there for the first few months. I didn't drink, didn't do anything. Do you know what I mean? But then I got to know local people down there doing coke and all of that, and I just straight back into it. Then, you know what I mean? And I just got heavier and heavier in drugs down there. And I was actually when I was living in Kerry, I was introduced to crack cocaine. There was a guy who lived beside me. He was on the run from England, and he asked me could I get coke, and I said one night, and I said yeah, I'll get coke. So I drove to Dublin, got him the coke, went back down, brought it down, and I'd never done crack before, and he washed it up and he gave me some and I smoked it, and then I was addicted to crack down there. And then so I came back up to Dublin, and because I burnt all my bridges down there, and I was back in Dublin, and worked a few jobs and that, but I couldn't stop using. Do you know what I mean? No matter what I done, I'd always use. And when I went drinking, that was it. I was gone for days. Do you know what I mean? And eventually the heroin came back on the scene, and I was bouncing around between, like, I was in Drogheda, I was out in Dundalk, I was down in Meath, I was in all over places. You know what I mean? I was just using here, using there, sleeping rough, sleeping in abandoned buildings, and I ended up in Dundalk, and I ended up doing a robbery down there, and I ended up getting 4 years in prison. So I went to prison, and when I went to prison first, I was introduced to methadone. I was never on methadone. I was around 26 at this stage. I was introduced. The doctor said to me in Clover Hill prison, he says, "You're sick from heroin. Would you want methadone?" And I says, "Yeah, give it to me. It's free drugs." You know what I mean? So he took the methadone. Light it, stopped me being sick. You know what I mean? And then I was on methadone then for the next 18 years then. Do you know what I mean? So, like, I was only supposed to be on it for a 30-day detox, and yeah, 18 years. And when I was on a clinic in town, the Castle Street Clinic, for 15 years, they never gave me an option of coming off it. It was just every day. Go and get your methadone. Groundhog Day. Shit, drugs, methadone. You know what I mean? Homeless hostels, living on the streets. You know what I mean? All that jazz. So around, I think it was 8 years ago, I was sick of that life. You know what I mean? I get the stages where I'll be doing okay on my methadone. Like I wouldn't be using that much. It'd be like once a week or something like that. But then I just like I'd use something like heavy drugs and I'd just go back down that rabbit hole again and just be crazy. So
What
about
what's it like living on the streets of Dublin, being homeless and being an addict?
eh, what's it like? It's not nice, It's like probably I think when you're living on the streets, you feel like dirt. Do you know what I mean? I was sleeping rough on the streets. I lived in hostels. I slept in squats, slept in tents. And it got to the stage where I was tapping, sitting outside the shop with a cup in front of me, and when that happened, then I was on the ground. I couldn't get any lower than that. Do you know what I mean? And I remember people used to look at me and they just like the thing I always think back, I always notice about it is that when people would spot you sitting on the ground tapping, they'd look away straight away. And I know now that what a lot of people do is out of sight, out of mind. They don't want to acknowledge you, so they look away, like you know what I mean. So and that makes you feel like a piece of dirt, you know what I mean. So it is. You don't think you can go any lower than that, like you mean. But towards the end of my using, I was overdosing all the time. I was messy. Do you know what I mean? I think I weighed around 7, 8 stone. Do you know what I mean? My family couldn't really. They'd bring me to like say family functions and that, but I wasn't really with it. You know what I mean? I was gone in the head. I don't think they really want me around. Do you know what I mean? Because I wasn't a nice person. Do you know what I mean? I don't think they really trust me. You know what I mean? So um, yeah, I think towards the end of my use, and I'd given up. I didn't want to live that life anymore, and I'd overdosed a few times, and I remember the last time I overdosed, I woke up in Beaumont Hospital, and I was brought in, and when I woke up, I was after getting defibbed, and I had tubes in me and all. And I remember lying there, and there was an old guy across me, and they were working on him because it was an ICU, and they were working on him. He was dying, and I was left there for about 3 hours listening to his breathing. I remember what you call it, him taking his last breaths, and when that happened, then what you call it, I left the hospital that morning. I says, "Fuck it, I'm gonna go and seek help," and I did. I had a friend who worked in Kilmine Addiction Services. He got me into a program. I begged him to actually get me in. He got me in the next day, and I went into Kilmine. I done Kilmine for a few months, and didn't know anything about recovery. Didn't know anything about meetings. Didn't know anything about anything really. You know, and I think I done about 7 months, and I got kicked out of the program, and I was back on the streets for a while, and I just wasn't doing well. So a few weeks later, one of the guys, if you're part of Kilmine, it's like you're part of it. You'll always be a part of Kilmine. Do you know what I mean? So I was sitting in the doorway one day, and one of the guys, he actually died now. It was a friend of mine. He died there a couple of years ago. He found me, and the key worker Sue White, she found me as well. And they told me that if you come back to Kilmine, we'll get you back in the morning. So I went back to Kilmine the following morning, and what you call it, decided there and then that I would try and give it me all. So I went back into Kilmine, and I done the program, stabilization program. We got down to 50 milligrams of methadone. Done a benzo detox, which is benzos or tablets. I mean, came off them. Didn't touch any heroin or crack or anything. I mean, for a couple of months, and they got me into a place called Kildare. So I went to Kildare, came off the methadone. Coming off the methadone was the hardest thing I ever did in my whole life. um, I'd much rather come off do a rattle on heroin than come off methadone, because coming off heroin, you're like sick for about 7, 8 days, and you get over it and you're kind of okay. But with methadone, it's months. It's just like it's so prolonged. I didn't sleep for 21 days. I had psychosis, no sleeping. Yeah, everything was just shit. Like I had like irritable legs, restless legs. um, itchiness, sick, headaches, everything. It just went on for about like a couple of months, Like it gets easier over the weeks, but it's like at least about 3 or 4 weeks of pain. And even then, after 4 or 5 weeks, you're still only getting like 1 or 2 hours sleep a night, So it's not good, So anyway, I done that, and I ended up at a place up in the Phoenix Park called Keltoy, and That's more about aftercare. You come off the drugs in Clondalkin, which is a hospital setting, and you go to Keltai, which is aftercare, but you stay there for 8 weeks, and it's all therapy based on groups and all. You know, and done all that, and came out, and Simon Community gave me a place. It's like a halfway house recovery house up in Clonskea. So I went there for about a year, and then they gave me another house, a 2-bedroom house, and up in Dean Swift, which is Francis Street, and that's how it kind of that was the start of me becoming a tour guide, because while I was in Clonskea, right, there was my best friend Shane Hell. He actually died last year. He did. Um, he was the first tour guide. So like basically he was sitting in the house, and he had all these bullet points and notes in front of him on the table, and I says, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm gonna be a tour guide." He was from Cork, so he had the Cork accent, you know what I mean? And it started off as a bit of banter. I turned around and said to him, I says, "What are you getting a Cork fella to do a Dublin tour for, you know what I mean? A walking tour." And he goes, "Oh, I bet you can't do it." I says, "I bet you can," you know. And so he got me involved, and he trained me, he helped train me, and you know, we became really good friends, because we lived in the same house, a 2-bedroom house together for 2 years, you know what I mean? And we became really good friends, and two of us were doing tours, and he came out on my tours, and I go out on his tours. And
No, it's not your ordinary tour. It's about highlighting the homeless issue, showing the different contrasts with people wouldn't see every day. I bring them down by the Capuchin Day Centre. I bring them past a few homeless hostels, and I explain what way life is in the homeless hostels, the different categories of homeless hostels. Some are nighttime only hostels, some are 6-month beds, and I do tell them a bit about that, because people don't get to talk to anybody on the streets. They don't really connect with anybody on the streets. And the most important thing about this tour is just giving me a chance to connect with people, because I was disconnected for years. I spent 7 years on the streets in homeless hostels. And for me, I call this hostel the last stop. I've seen gentlemen in there, and it doesn't seem that they're going to progress anywhere else in life. They would have a long history of rough sleeping and serious mental and physical health problems. People don't get the chance to talk to somebody when they see them in a sleeping bag. They don't know what's going on for them. They don't know where they're coming from. The order of the day is to get through the day. The only contact I had was agencies, food halls, soup runs, sometimes even down to getting a sleeping bag. Around the corner you have hundreds of people queuing every day for food, for dinners. 700 meals a day they give out. You can even go in there for a shower in the morning and get a bit of breakfast for the long day ahead on the streets, and ring the free phone number for another bed that night, and you don't know are you getting a bed or not. I had to do a bit of research in the bedroom, done a bit of study around the history and that, but the most important thing is highlighting the homeless and just telling a bit of my own story. It's given me a chance to connect with people and build my confidence and skills to progress and move on in life. Thanks to Secret Street Tours for giving me this opportunity to share my story and to build my confidence. And looking to the future, I'm going back to adult education in September, and I'm still on the social housing waiting list. And all I want is something simple where I can bring my son up from Cork and just sit down and watch a bit of telly with him. Something simple like that. Not a big house on the hill, you know, just something simple, have a game of football with him. Simple things. So I thank you all for coming along today. Thanks.
we were really close, you know, and we've been close from now for the last, what was it, like 5.5 years, 6 years it was, you know, because he died last year. So
How did he die?
Overdose. Yeah. It's another thing about addiction is, you know what I mean, it never leaves you. It's always there, like, you know what I mean. And it's like for me personally, like, you know what I mean, I have to keep it. I have to keep a lid on it. And when we keep a lid on it, I go to NA meetings, Narcotics Anonymous. I'm always involved in recovery somewhere along the line, do you know what I mean? Along the road, do you know what I mean? Because it keeps me reminded of who I am and what's out there, do you know what I mean? And so I do that. So so he died anyway, and I kind of got like start doing more and more tours, and then we got another guy involved. He's a good friend of mine as well, Noel Murray. I think I told you about it before. He's one of the guys who ran away to New York in 1985. So he does his tour around Mountjoy Prison and that, and I do my tour over the south side. My tour is a better side a tour than his. Only because it's on the south side of the city, you know. The south side of the city is a little bit better, you know. So
Have the tours saved you?
oh yeah. And the tours have turned me into a person that, like, before, like, even in recovery, I didn't really want to know people. I didn't want to like I had people around me, but I didn't know, like, I wasn't really interested in people. I was more like kind of like an introvert, you know. And I think that was always, I was never like proper introvert, but it was because of drugs and where I was and isolation, all that, you know. But I found out when I started doing tours that I was actually an extrovert, and I like to talk and I like to meet new people, and that's what I do. And part of it being a tour guide my tours is like 50% of the history of the area and 50% my story, the streets. So I'll go by my own methadone clinic, tell them about what life is like on methadone. I'll go by homeless hostels, tell them what life is like in hostels, tell them about what life is like sleeping on the streets, where you get food, talk about the housing crisis, you know, and because people are interested in that, you know. And I started doing the tours. I done 99% history, do you know what I mean? And very, very little about myself. I tell them that I was an addict, but that was it, like, you know. But then as I went along, I found out that people are more interested in my story than they were in history, like, and so it's kind of gravitated towards like 50-50, you know what I mean? And I like telling people my story. As I said to you earlier, I'm an open book, you know what I mean? I'm not ashamed or of my past, you know, because we all have past, you know what I mean? I'm a firm believer that, like, you know, I mean, like, it never really make up for the past of my past because I've done a lot of damage there along the road. But I also think that, like, if I do good going forward, you know what I mean, I'll be a good person, like, you know, and that's what I do, like, you know, I try and help people along the road, you know what I mean. Go to meetings, always be like available to help people, like, you know, I'll do talks, you know, like in mental health services, treatment centres. I do a lot of school tours, so like for transition years, so I do a lot of talks for transition years because a lot of kids nowadays, 15-year-olds, they're all dabbling with weed. Not all of them, but some of them are dabbling with weed and that. And I just tell them the dangers of it, like, you know, and how it all started off for me and where I ended up, you know, and that's all you can do is tell your story, you know. I'm a firm believer that if you tell someone not to do something, they're going to do it. Do you know what I mean? So you're better off just educating people about the dangers of it. You know what I mean? Because you know, when you're young, your parents go, "Don't take drugs." Straight away, you're going to have to get drugs. And I thought it's been like that, you know. So yeah.
Um, what was your darkest day on the streets? Do you remember the lowest point?
Darkest day in the streets.
People, I'd say people that probably rob you when you're sleeping or bet you up, or maybe the coppers gave you a licking too hard, or
Yeah, no, I'll tell you actually, you brought this up. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but I was sitting up in Campbell Street one time and I was tapping, you know, like I had a couple in front of me. I was asking people for change, you know, and these two Australian tourists were going by, two young fellas, you know, and one of them had a burger, do you know what I mean? And the guy goes, "Do you want a burger?" Like, and I says, "Yeah, I had the burger." I mean, and he actually hopped it off my head, do you know what I mean? So yeah, I can remember that one all right, do you know what I mean? And stuff like that, do you know what I mean? Getting kicks and stuff like that when you're asleep and on the streets, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's quite rough. There's so many things, like, you know what I mean? But I think that's the one that really stands out for me. It's just someone like would do that and then he ran away laughing, like, you know what I mean? So yeah, I find it's just like that, all right, you know what I mean? And other things, waking up in hostels with people dead in the room. Do you know what I mean? There was actually a guy I know one time, I used to use him. Um, I went and got two of us went and got heroin, and went back to the room, and I smoked it, and he injected, and I fell asleep in the bed, and I woke up next morning, and he was dead in the bed. Like, I mean, he was only 18, like, you know what I mean? So stuff like that, you know what I mean? Then we're like, there's a hostel I stayed in Cedar House, and which is just on Malborough Street there, and every day they were like taking people out of the toilets, either overdose or dead, you know what I mean? Because they're in there injecting, like, you know what I mean, heroin. So, and it became like it became normal. Do you know what I mean? Like, you get this desensitized to all this stuff, you know what I mean? And being in recovery as well, we get to we get we get to experience a lot of people dying along the route. Do you know what I mean? Like my best friend there last year, Shane, like, you know what I mean? I must know about 12, 13 people that have died over the last few years. Some of them were close with. Some of them I knew from my day program. Some I knew from treatment. Do you know what I mean? And it's just, yeah, you just as you go along, people die. Like, you know what I mean? It just happens. It just so happens to happen more when you're in recovery, because some people think that, like, fucking when you come into recovery, right, you get clean, right, you're going to lead a normal life, you're going to get a job, a house, whatever, like that, married, whatever, like, you know, it doesn't work like that, you know what I mean? The main thing you need to do is be reminded of who you are, an addict, and that's why I go to meetings, NA meetings, because it reminds me of who I am and what I am. Do you know what I mean? Because when I start to lose that, you know what I mean, I'm in trouble. Do you know what I mean? Because I live in the city centre, there's drugs all around me. I walk outside my gaff and they're smoking crack, like, you know what I mean? So I need to have that I need to have that help there with NA, you know what I mean? And that's what it does. It helps me, you know what I mean? And it keeps me grounded, you know what I mean?
do you think the drug scene in Dublin is getting worse day by day?
Oh yeah, 100%. Ever since It used to be all heroin, now it's all crack cocaine. Um, I think ever since COVID, what happened was there was a lot of during COVID there wasn't much heroin around, but there was a lot of cocaine that wasn't being sold in pubs and clubs because this country is massive for cocaine. So a lot of guys were sitting on cocaine. They so decided to turn into crack and went around and gave a lot of addicts, heroin addicts, free samples, and I think a lot of heroin addicts then became crack addicts. And I'm living in the city centre. I'm walking around, and every doorway you look at, there's people smoking. It's just like it's different to when I was using. And that's only in a short few years. It's the whole scene has changed. It's all crack cocaine now. And it makes people volatile as well. A lot of mental health, a lot of desperation, even worse than heroin. Do you know what I mean? So they're like fucking, and and it's not a desperation and mental health is not it's not a good combination.
Do you think the government is doing enough in Ireland to combat
No,
homelessness?
no. I think that one of the a massive industry over here over the last few years is private hostels. So Gardner Street, you had a lot of B&Bs there. They're all private hostels now. So they're either private iPass or private what you call it. When I say private, they're owned by private companies. Do you know what I mean? So these guys, you know what I mean? Like they have like one of my friends works in them. There's like 96 beds, so it's like a room with 10 bunk beds in it. You know what I mean? They get their food, they get their showers, whatever in there, and it's not run by a charity, so it's not like, especially for homeless people, they don't have their needs met like as if they stay in the silent community or Peter McFerry's or Salvation Army. They would have people there trying to deal with them. You know what I mean? Whereas the other places, the private hostels, they're just security guards who are working there. You know what I mean? Just glorified security guards. That's a massive industry. Do you know what I mean? Loads of them open up a few years. I don't know why the government don't give the money to the charities and let them open up and operate hostels where they can actually operate them properly and safely. You know what I mean? Instead of all these if you walk down Garda Street lately, you walk down and there's just people sitting on the steps there outside B&B smoking crack and drinking and all like that. It's becoming a no-go area for normal people. You know what I mean? And even though I've been around that for years, even when I walk down there, I kind of like, what the hell? You know what I mean? The change in the last few years is unreal. You know what I mean? So they're putting them all into one area. Do you know what I mean? And it's creating problems. You know what I mean? And then with the mixture of drugs and mental health and everything else, and then it's just off the wall. What I heard as well is some of these guys who own these companies, these private hostels, are basically big businessmen. There's one guy there now. Me and Shane, before he died, done a bit of research, and he was a top GAA official from Monaghan, and it seemed he made 11 million in 1 year of profits from homelessness. Do you know what I mean? Come on, you know what I mean? Somebody's making profits off homeless people. You know what I mean? This is the problem. Do you know what I mean? We're becoming like America, capitalistic. You know what I mean? And this is the problem. You know what I mean? And I'm sure our politicians are involved as well. You know what I mean? So I don't know if you can put that up.
What's your aspirations for the future, Kenny?
My aspirations for the future is to build the tours, is to get more people involved. You know what I mean? I think it's a great way of integrating people back into society. You know what I mean? And giving them a voice. You know what I mean? We're hoping to get a girl involved. You know what I mean? Because there's two fellas. You know what I mean? But to get a girl who wants to do it, it's not for everybody. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like when you're going up and I remember one of my first tours, I had 45 kids, 15-year-olds in front of me. You know, you're when you're coming from the backgrounds we came from, and all of a sudden you have to present yourself in front of 45 kids. You know what I mean? You're on stage. You know what I mean? It's very, very hard. You know what I mean? It takes a long while to get used to it. You know what I mean?
And how did Secret Street Tours start?
Secret Street Tours was set up by a guy called Tom Austin and Pierce Dargan. They were two Trinity College graduates. Right. Now, there was a homeless crisis back then. This is about 8 or 9 years ago. It's still the same to this day. Anyway, they wanted to give back somehow, and they were over in Vienna, in Austria, and they seen a similar tour being done over there, and decided to come over here and implement, set it up over here. So they set it up. Now Pierce is not involved anymore, but Austin, Tom is, and we have a couple of volunteers as well. You know what I mean? Hazel and Fiona and Janice to name a few. Gabby, Lauren, they're all involved, and they're volunteers. Everybody, like even Tom, they're all volunteers because it's a social enterprise. The only people that actually get paid is me and Noel, but we only get a cut of what comes in because the rest goes clerical and all like that. You know what I mean? Because it ain't cheap to run anything in Dublin, like, you know what I mean. So yeah, our aspirations is I'm involved in the day to day. Like, I mean, I'll do all the talks for them and all. Like, I mean, I'm kind of heavy involved. So like, I still want to be a tour guide. I always want to be a tour guide. I still want to do it. Like, I mean, but I also want to be involved more in it as well. Like, I mean, but I am involved as in, like, when Noel came in, I would have trained Noel up. Like, I mean, that's no more you do the New York Noel, you call him. But I would have trained him up. And then if somebody else comes in, I'll train them up as well and show them how I do it. And because for me, it was all trial and error, like, you know, at the start, you know, and I think I have it out to a T. And I just like to, I tell people stories of the streets, you know, funny stories, you know, because it's not all doom and gloom, like, you know, there's a bit of fun out there as well, and we like to have a laugh, you know, and yeah,
What's your favorite tourist?
Americans.
Why?
All about the money. Tips.
You go for the tips.
Good for the tips, yeah, yeah. I don't mind. Like, honestly, like, my favorite tours is I done a tour last week, and they were Americans, but they were all like college students, and they were all studying to be social workers. Now, our tour is only like an hour and 15 minutes. They were so nice, and they were so attentive that, like, we actually done 2.5 hours with them, because they were trained to be social workers, so they had more empathy and all, like, you know what I mean? And it was nice. And a couple of them as well were ex-addicts themselves. So it became a chit chat back and forward. You know what I mean? They told me a little bit about their stories and that as well, like, you know what I mean? Which was really, really good, and I really, really enjoyed it. You know what I mean? I think that's they're probably the tours I get the most out of. You know what I mean? Because it's good for them, and it's also good for us, you know, to listen to them as well. Like, you know, anybody's coming from a social, we get a lot of people coming out, doctors, nurses, psychiatrists, people who work with mental health, addiction services, you know what I mean? All that, you know what I mean? So they're coming from across the world as well, like, and I like people like that, you know what I mean? Because they're more open, you know what I mean? And they have more empathy towards people as well, like, and it all depends, you know what I mean? Like, your audience, but yeah, probably the Americans are the best, yeah.
Any advice for a young man growing up in Dublin today, or if you were to travel back in time and talk to yourself as a young man, what would you say?
Someone asked me this there last year, if I could travel back in time, or what would I do? I wouldn't change. Yeah, there's a lot of madness, there's a lot of hardship, there's a lot of pain there, but, like, you know, the way I see it is, it's maybe who I am today. Do you know what I mean? And like, as I'm saying, I'm doing good now. I'm helping people and that, like, you know what I mean? And if I went back in time and told myself not to do drugs and all that, you know what I mean, then I wouldn't be this person today. I think I'm here for a reason. Do you know what I mean? And this is the reason I'm here for. Like, you know what I mean? It made me who I am. Do you know what I mean? And we were talking earlier on. It gives me more empathy towards people. Like, you know what I mean? And I don't judge people. Like, you know, I told you I'm a firm believer of swings and roundabouts. You know what I mean? I put out good, I receive good. I put out bad, I receive bad. Do you know what I mean? And karma. Do you know what I mean? So I'm a big believer in karma as well. Like, you know what I mean? So, and this is what I do. Do you know what I mean? I want a nice, simple life. All I want is a house on the hill with stables, maybe a couple of acres. What a joke.
Kenny, thanks so much for your time today, man.
Yeah. Thanks.